welcome to another edition of Paratalk. I'm Gareth Davis, and once again I'm joined by paranormal enthusiast Reeves Cook. Today we have a strange one, like we don't have strange ones every week, but this one is very weird. This is called the Black Knight Satellite. Hey, Reeves.
Sounds like an intro for a song, doesn't it?
The Black Knight Satellite.
Yeah, it's weird.
This is very strange.
I brought up this, should we say, account, story, myth, whatever you want to call it, because not only is it weird, but it's kind of relevant weird, because we've got a little bit of everything here. We've got a little bit of ancient objects in space, the secret space program, and just a bunch of strangeness, really.
Well, we should let listeners know immediately that the photographs that we're going to link to on the Mindset Paratalk page are absolutely 100% not fake. These are real photographs directly from the NASA archives. Mm-hmm. So unless NASA is actively faking photographs, these pictures are real.
Yeah, and also I just wanted to jump in that in 2008, because we're talking about space and we're going to be talking about off-planet activity, which is obviously in orbit. That in 2008 there was some research done, and there were around 10,000 objects were orbiting Earth, known objects. 3,000 of those were actually on paper known and were active, as in active satellites or space material that was being used at the time.
Debris, garbage, stuff from
so we were looking at another 7,000 of those things were
just trash floating in orbit, right?
Junk, yeah. Just to give people an idea of how much stuff is up there and floating around. So it's not like we've got maybe 50 satellites up there and it's all, and it's all clear space. There's a lot of stuff going on up there. The pictures that the viewers can view along with this episode, they were taken and they are, I'm going to say they're legit because they came from a legit source. But like anything, there's always a double side to the story. NASA tell us that these objects that you're seeing are nothing more than bits of seats and bits of old satellite that have been discarded that are just floating around. But if you look closely at some of these objects, they certainly do look a little bit out of the strange.
That's very true, but also by the same token, Reeves, we have no real reference of scale here. So when we look at these pictures, they could be hundreds of miles wide or maybe a few inches. We really don't know. So unless NASA is up to some kind of disinformation tactic where they're making these pictures available to make people think that something's going on that actually isn't, then we've kind of stumbled across something here that maybe was best kept under wraps. So
let's, now that we've given our listeners a little bit of a heads up, let's go all the way back to 1899, and we bring in Nikola Tesla, and everybody knows who Tesla is. The man who did amazing things with electricity and many other inventions that seem to be strangely suppressed today. Now, he builds a high-voltage radio device in Colorado Springs, and he's using this device for experimentation, doing his research, and so forth. And he picks up repeating signals, which he deduces that these signals, after doing some research, that they must come from outside of Earth. Now, there is another side to this beginning of this account, where we could say, with modern eyes, well, all he's hearing is maybe a pulsar or something like that. But anyway, he's picking up these signals. He makes note of it, and it all goes quiet until the early 1900s. Now, in the early 1900s, like many of us today, that are sort of in our 40s will remember CB radio. Back then, it was all radio hams, and it was all radio communication. That was the thing to be in, and you had lots of radio ham groups that would contact each other all around the world. Now, one group that was talking to one another, they picked up these signals as well.
We should mention, though, Reeves, that the ham radio is still very, very popular today. There's still a huge community and culture of people that are into ham all over the world.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But, I mean, it's more of a... Well, I mean, as an ex-CBer, I know how big that was, and obviously ham radio is kind of a bit more of a.
It was more serious, right? Because with ham radio, you have to take a test, you have to get a license, all that stuff. Whereas with a CB, anyone can go buy a CB.
Yeah.
So and with a CB, you get maybe 5 or 10 miles of broadcast range.
If you're lucky.
With a ham, you can talk to people on the other side of the planet.
Definitely.
You have amazing power and range with these pieces of equipment.
Yeah. So we've got Tesla with his signals from his experiments. He picks up these signals. Then in the early 1900s, we've had these radio hams which are conversing with each other from different locations. They're picking up these signals as well, and then it goes all kind of a bit quiet then till the early 1928, and now we bring in a scientist again, and he picks up signals which are LDE signals, which are
what's that? What's LDE?
Long delay echoes, which are now he was undertaking experiments as well, but he was undertaking experiments with radio waves. Now he'd picked up these signals and he really thought nothing of it, so he basically put it to one side, put it in his notes and put it to one side. Now we must remember up to this point that these signals are classed as just random signals from somewhere. They're not. Nobody's thinking spacemen or UFOs or some rogue satellite.
Right. It's just a signal they're receiving, and they're not sure where it's coming from. But at that time period, nobody really had their head in space. Well, there were some people, obviously, but the vast majority of people were not thinking of extraterrestrial stuff.
As far as we're concerned, there's nothing really up there, because it's not until 1957 that the Sputnik 1 was launched, and obviously that goes up and it sends the signals back, and of course, from that.
Well, that was really the beginning, not only of the space race, but it was also the beginning of the ignition of the public's imagination in regard to space, right?
Yeah, that's it. Now, the interesting thing is, when the Sputnik went up, American and Soviet forces both detected a satellite that was in polar orbit, but neither side knew where this extra object had originated from, because until that time we weren't looking up there to look for something else. We weren't, they were, the Russians had launched this satellite, so obviously, you've got your different powers looking up there to see, well, what have they got up there, and they detect something else, allegedly, but neither side know where this other object has come from.
Right.
Okay, so in the 1960s, this is when it hits the public arena, because before then, it wasn't really spoke about in a big way. So it hits the public arena and it hits the papers, and they start to talk about this this satellite, this other thing that's up there, and what is it, and is there anything up there? And this is the kind of the...
Let me just kind of get this straight. So we have two superpowers. You have the United States and you have the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
They're both actively involved in space, right? It's a series of one-upmanship. I can do this better than you. No, I can do it better than you. They both detect a satellite, and they both think it's the other guys, but in reality...
Well, allegedly, yes. It's
neither.
As the story goes.
Right.
Yeah. In 1957, when Sputnik was launched, both, obviously, Russia was listening for it,
right,
and also America was listening for it, because they immediately thought that Sputnik was a spy satellite designed and created to spy on them. Okay, so both countries are looking for, the Sputnik.
Right.
But allegedly, they pick up another object that is in polar orbit around Earth. Allegedly.
All right.
And this is where the story starts to move into the public eye, because a number of newspapers pick up on this story because it's leaked out, and they start to write about it. I talk about this.
This is so strange, because you're telling me this story right now, and you just sparked a memory in my head.
Really?
Yeah. It does happen occasionally. And the memory is, this is from like the late 70s, maybe 76, 77, around that. I'm like, I don't know, 8 or 9 years old. And we're on holiday. We're on vacation in Spain as I'm a kid with my family. And I remember distinctly my parents talking about reading in the newspaper that they discovered some kind of object in space, like a derelict spacecraft in orbit around Earth. And it was in the news. And my parents were kind of laughing at it, like joking around, kind of, this is nonsense. And I remember sitting there, like, listening intently, thinking, is this real? Could there really be a derelict spacecraft in orbit? Now, I don't know whether this is related to this story or not, but that memory just popped into my head while you were talking right then.
Well, actually, that's quite interesting, because around that same time period, which we're going to skip forward now from 1960, when the story actually hit the papers. 1957 is when Sputnik went up.
Yeah.
And then 1960, the story hits the papers. But in 1973, an author by the name of Duncan Lunan, right? He allegedly analyzed the long echo delay data, which was gathered in 1928 from the Norwegian scientist who picked up the signals, but didn't actually do anything with the data, the extra data. He didn't do anything with it. It was just stored away. He took this, Duncan took this information, and he decided to analyze the data. Now, allegedly, the author, he analyzed this and concluded from his research that the data wasn't in fact any random noise or anything, but it was actually an invitation, should we say it decoded as an invitation to Epsilon Boötis. Now, that's this actual invitation was over 12,500 years old. So, to logically conclude, if this data was correct, to logically conclude from that whatever this object,
it's been up there for a very long time,
has been up there for at least 12,500 years, sending a signal to Earth as an invitation to Epsilon Boötis.
Interesting.
Now, I want to get into a little bit of maths and a little bit of for our listeners, just to elaborate on what Epsilon Boötis is. Okay, now, Epsilon Boötis is a double star. Okay, it's in the northern constellation of Boötis, right? And it's the star system, right? It can be seen with the naked eye. No telescopes, no binoculars. We can go out into our night sky and look in the right place, and you can see it. Okay.
Okay.
So it's viewable in the night sky if you live in the right place. Now, it's 202 light years away from us, from Earth. Okay. So the invitation is to a place 202 light years away, and it's the 82nd brightest star in our Earth's night sky. Right. So, okay. 1 light year is 5.8 trillion miles. Okay. So traveling at the speed of light, it's 1 light year, 5.8 trillion miles. Okay, to date, okay, now, modern day, the fastest unmanned spacecraft, okay, has travelled at 157 miles per hour. Okay. Now, at that rate, okay, if we was to go there and come back, right, it would take around 8,500 years.
Right. Traveling
You were following me?
Right. Yeah.
So a farmer that was maybe a Mesopotamian farmer that was maybe living, I don't know, 6,500 years ago, okay, he would now, well, it's actually 6,500 years before Christ, okay, before the date, before we changed it all. He would just be now returning home back here.
Right.
So those are the kind of distances we're talking about.
Vast
These
distances.
Incredible, mind-boggling distances.
Well, you say it's 200 light years away, so the light leaving the star to reach our eyes takes 200 years to get here. Basically, right? Traveling, light speed is 186,000 miles a second.
Per second, yeah.
Right. So traveling at that speed, the light it takes 200 years for the light to reach us. So it's a bit of a distance.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
it's crazy. So allegedly, we have an object that is in polar orbit around Earth. It's allegedly been there for over 12,500 years. It's sending a coded radio signal. Obviously, it would be a radio signal because if you think about it...
It would have to be because it
would have to be.
Yeah, it'd have to be radio.
It's sending a radio signal to Earth for people to pick up, which is in coded form.
Right.
Okay, and then it's obviously decoded, and the author, this chap who was doing the research, concluded that it was an invite. Okay.
Amazing.
Now...
All right, before we go any further...
Okay.
And it's going to get better, folks. Trust us. This is really getting good. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
The Mind Tech Podcast is your weekly dose of tech, privacy, security, and conspiracy. Each week, the Mind Tech Podcast will talk about the very latest tech news and the continued threats to internet freedom. Hosted by Garrett Davis and Joe Resington. You can download and subscribe to the Mind Tech Podcast at mindsetcentral.com.
You're listening to Paratalk.
Hi, everyone. This is Gareth from MindsetCentral.com. Just coming on really quickly to talk to you about subscribing or donating to Mindset Central. Right now, we average about 17 brand new podcasts a month on Mindset Central, and that's for free. So you get that content for free. It always has been free, and it will continue to be free. But just take a moment to imagine the time and the effort it takes to put all that together, plus also creating, building, sustaining the website and the server costs. We're constantly finding ourselves reaching the point that sometimes is the breaking point, and we're up against that old foe of time and money. And we're hoping that with your help, we can break through this wall. Not only do we want to continue with Mindset Central, but we want to build upon it and create something very special on the internet. So please think about helping us and becoming a subscriber. By becoming a subscriber to Mindset Central, you'll have access to the subscriber section, which provides exclusive, all-new podcasts and a lot more. The subscriber section has and will continue to grow into an area that you will want to be a part of. And with monthly access priced at that of a large coffee at Starbucks. So for one coffee, you get access to the subscriber section, packed with content that is continually added to on a weekly basis. So please help us. Help us by becoming a subscriber. Thank you. And we're back. Okay, Reeves, so when we left, we were talking about the distance between Epsilon Boötis and Earth, and an encoded signal that was allegedly being transmitted for thousands of years, inviting us to come visit.
Now, moving on a little bit. Now, there has been people out there that have said, well, if I have a really powerful telescope and I look into the night sky, I should be able to see this object. Now, there is some conjecture on that, because I thought that as well. Well, if the object's in any polar orbit, you should be able to see it. Even, we see the International Space Station whiz over now and again if it's coming over our neck of the woods. But there has been some people that have said, well, it's not really, it moves around. One minute it's in one part, next minute it's another part. That's a bit strange. But this also, there's information that has come from, I haven't got named astronauts, but shuttle astronauts that have allegedly been the individuals that have taken the photographs of the object while they've been in orbiting Earth on the space shuttle before the shuttle was its life, ended. Now, the pictures that we have along with this episode will be the pictures that I'm referring to.
Well, a lot of these pictures, I think we mentioned earlier on, or maybe before the show when we were talking about this, a lot of the pictures are of many, many different objects.
Yeah.
But some of them are of the same object but different angles.
Yeah. NASA has been approached by a number of researchers, UFO researchers, individuals that want just basically to get some answers, and they have been given the response of it's nothing, don't worry about it, it's nothing of any interest, and others have been told that what they're seeing is parts of space junk from previous shuttle missions, which are stuck in an orbit, or they are parts of the discarded. When they send up
like
stuff,
the booster rockets and things like that.
Yeah, things like that. There's junk like that. It's nothing.
To be fair, though, Reeves, that is a possibility. Like as we said earlier, we have no relation to scale for these objects, and these objects do look very strange. They do look artificial, and they do look enormous.
Yeah.
But we have no real reference of scale. They could be miles wide or inches. We really don't know.
Right. Okay. Now we have Duncan. We'll bring Duncan into the picture. I just want to bring him back a moment because we have a little bit of not a conspiracy, but a bit of an interesting side note here. Now Duncan was the individual that said that these allegedly he said that these objects, this signal were giving us information to an invitation and so forth, which we spoke about just a little bit earlier on. He strangely later retracted his claim, and he said that he never said it was a satellite, and that he never had that in mind at the time. And also, when he was researching the data, he actually retracted the information that he gave out. Now, that's an interesting side note in itself. Why would someone who seems to be so keen at the time to get the information out suddenly retract his claims and his statements that he'd made those years before?
But not just retract it and say I was mistaken, but saying I didn't say that when it's plainly obvious that he did. Yeah,
there is another side note to this. Now, in Declassified files, which information came out in 1992, they tell of a Corona spy satellite, They were a number of satellites which were placed up in high Earth orbit, and they work like a net, where the satellites basically would communicate with one another. They were in polar orbit, and they were basically like they could spy. They could see anywhere. You could see anywhere on the planet. Now, this was a top secret program, and I can't say I have the information. I haven't done enough research to say if it's real or not, and if it did, if it's still there or if it's something ongoing. But we do have, we do speak of the Star Wars program and the stuff that went on there, and that was when was that? It was Reagan years, wasn't it?
That was like the mid 80s, 84, 85, 86, around that time.
So we know that that goes on.
Interesting side note: the Star Wars program, when Reagan came out and announced that the Strategic Defense Initiative, and he called it Star Wars. Did you know that George Lucas took the U.S. government to court and sued them over copyright violation of Star Wars?
Really?
I'm being serious. Yeah, he took them to court. He sued them over copyright violation, and guess what?
Did he win?
He lost.
He lost.
Yep.
Well, I don't see a TM on Star Wars.
Just a interesting little side note there.
Because, but that is interesting. I coined this.
Yeah, because in the mid '80s, they were all the Star Wars initiative, Star Wars, and he was like, "Hey, hang on a sec, that's my movie franchise. I'm going to sue you, copyright," and he lost. Well,
that's definitely interesting. But we did have obviously the Star. Used it again. I'm not paying anyone any money, but we had the Star Wars project, which is for the was it Defense Shield or whatever it was, and so there are things going on up there that we don't know about.
Oh, absolutely.
So, as crazy as this account, or some people call it a urban space myth, we really don't know what's up there and how long, if something is up there, has been up there. Because really, we are just on a tiny little planet in a huge universe, and we don't know what else is. We're not even looking over our back fence.
Well, yeah. Forget aliens and UFOs and all. Forget that. We have no idea what the space program is up to, and not just the NASA and the American space program, but space programs of other countries. We don't know what's in orbit. We don't know whether the International Space Station is the only space station up there. We have no idea, and that's what makes these photographs so provocative, because they do look man-made, they do look like they're enormous, and they do look like they have levels of technology that when you look around on Earth today, we are not privy to.
A lot of people thought that at the end of the space shuttle era, when they retired all the shuttles and the space program came to not a halt, because there's space programs and there's space programs, but they thought that a lot of the launches, there was no more launches going on. But there is another space shuttle. And a lot of people don't realize this, but it's a mini shuttle. It's and it's the X-37B, and it's an unmanned mini shuttle.
Right, but that's not the only thing. I mean, there are countries all over the planet constantly sending up satellites and who knows what else into orbit. So these photographs, Reeves, they're so provocative, and the reason they're so provocative is because they do look so strange, and they come from the original source. They come directly from NASA. So there's only two possibilities here. Either NASA is engaged in a massive disinformation campaign, and they are manufacturing these pictures. They're, making them in Photoshop or whatever. Or these are genuine photographs of unknowns in orbit.
Yep. Definitely. Well, people coin you can't trust what NASA's saying. NASA have doctored their images ever since the moon landings. Look at the early moon photographs, from the orbiters and stuff, and look how they've been doctored. Look how they've been blurred and smudged, and things have been covered up.
Interesting side note there is that we have all these lunar researchers like Richard Hoagland and Mike Barra and all these people that are looking for artificial structures on the moon and asteroids and on Mars. They will only look at genuine NASA photographs from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. They will not touch anything new because of the advances in computer technology and how easy it is to use an old term here, airbrush or change the contents of the photographs. It's trivial now. Before, it could be done, but it was a big hassle. Now it's trivial. Anyone can do it. They will not look at modern photographs because it's so easy for them to fake. Whereas back in the day, in the 50s and 60s and maybe early 70s, you could spot these things because it was that much more difficult to cover them up.
Definitely.
And a lot of stuff would slip through the net.
Yeah. I mean, one of the great things, when a lot of the lunar missions, a lot of the processing was actually done, on board, and then it was digitally scanned and it was sent back to, the HQ where all the the guys were that were controlling the satellites that were doing
and that's not. Having said all that, though, that's not to say that you will not find anomalies in modern photographs. You absolutely will, but you'll also find evidence of digital artifacts where they've removed things too quickly. I think one of the most recent ones is the latest the Mars rover that landed on Mars in July or August of 2012. Yeah, and they had those amazing photographs taken by the orbiter of the craft landing with the parachute open and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And those photographs are covered with digital artifacts, so that they've been clearly doctored, that they've been erased or airbrushed, or things have been removed from those images. And they write it off like, oh, it was an error in processing. And it's like, no, you can see that anyone who's into digital photography or how to change or manipulate photographs in Photoshop or other applications, you can see that something has been removed and or covered up. I mean, what that something is, we have no idea because it's been removed, but the evidence of tampering is clear.
Well, like these photographs today with this alleged rogue satellite, if you look at if you go to the JPL website or the NASA website and you look at a lot of the images, that's just a minute portion of images from the thousands and thousands of images that have been taken.
Hundreds of thousands
over each mission. It's constant clicking and constant taking photographs and documenting. And I think that we're never really. I expect that they've got reams and gigabytes and terabytes of data that's not even been processed
that'll
yet.
Never be released. We only get a tiny fraction. You know, and out of that tiny fraction, only a few that are released undoctored, because they tweak the colors, the light, the angles, they erase certain things which might look a little, dare I say it, artificial.
When we see pictures this good of objects in orbit of our own planet, that clearly you can see the design, markings, whatever you want to call it. You immediately think, what's the first thing you think? Immediately you think, well, there is, that maybe there is backstory here and maybe it kind of fits in some way, but these are just too good to be true.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, when you see these things, there are only two possibilities, right? It's either us or them.
Yeah.
And the more provocative one is that it's us. Because there's so many rumors and speculations of a secret space program that the stuff that we see on television, on the news, is the cover, is the Wizard of Oz. It's the big head. We never see the man behind the curtain. Yeah, which is the real space program, which has crazy advanced technology. And a lot of these photographs could be of that. I mean, this is all speculation. It might be completely accurate or completely nonsense. We don't know. We're just speculating. But these photographs are definitely provocative. Now, we're rapidly approaching the end of the show, but I do want to ask you where the name came, the Black Knight satellite. Where did that come from?
This is from my research, because if you look at the object, it looks a bit like a...
okay, so it just looks like a Black Knight. There's no...
And being black as well. I think that they put the two things together and it's kind of stuck. And then there's kind of... I don't want to call it an urban myth, but it's more of a space myth. And I think it's a great story, And we have got some backstory which kind of fits with these anomalous radio signals. Okay, we could be completely off track here, and they could simply Tesla could have been picking up pulsars and not knowing what they were.
Right, exactly.
But it's interesting that we have individuals that bring up and say, "Hey, this could be, this information. We could be giving information." Then they suddenly retract their story. I never spoke about that. I never, and we've got this bit of a story going here, and it's interesting that it's still in the public limelight. But when we look at the pictures, they're so great, the pictures, and you immediately think, well, I'd love this to be true, but
who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah, well, there you go, folks. Another episode of Paratalk. Look at the photographs on the MindsetCentral.com website. Check them out. Make up your own mind. Whichever way you look at it, these photographs are definitely fascinating and thought-provoking.
Definitely.
Well, thank you so much, Reeves, and thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back very soon with more Paratalk.